Welcome, everyone, to another one of our free monthly wellness webinars. This is Dish with Dina. Every month, we bring to you a different topic. And this month, we're very excited because this is definitely a dietitian's favorite month. And as the time, at the time of this event and at the time of this recording, yesterday was actually National Registered Dietitian Day. So many reasons to celebrate. Obviously, the world of nutrition is quite universal, but we try to hone in every year in this campaign that's presented by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics with a theme. And so this year's theme was focused around what's called the power of nutrition. And with all due respect to the Academy, I did see their slides. I didn't love them. So I'm putting my own spin on things as to how I think we should define what the power of nutrition is. So welcome to those of you who are joining and welcome to those of you who are here. It's nice to see some familiar faces and names. Speaking of faces, I can't see anybody's video, so obviously keep your camera off for now. We'll talk a little bit more about housekeeping in a second. And if you are not able to attend live, we'll talk a little bit about that too. So on here, I always like to give some objectives, some key takeaways that I hope you get from when you attend these webinars. Just understanding a little bit more, some of the stuff we repeat in every webinar is just a nice way to reconnect and recommit to some of this understanding about what brings us energy, what provides nutrition to our bodies, and also how we can prioritize things for you to develop more of a customized approach to reduce your risk of chronic conditions, to help manage something that you might already be diagnosed with, or to prevent something from getting worse along the lines. Then we'll talk a little bit too about what a balanced meal looks like. And at the end, I do have some takeaways for you, like action plan. I have been somewhat consistent with creating a handout for every webinar too. So it didn't go out with the registration, but when the event is done and I put together the recording afterwards, I'll send a link or an attachment so you can have a little handout and create for yourself some more itemized, customized, individualized approaches to how you want to include nutrition modifications into your lifestyle. Here's some housekeeping things. Obviously, as you come into the session, you probably hear that the session is recorded. You can use the chat box at any time, although usually there's about 40 minutes or so, 40 to 45 minutes. So I do try to set aside some time for formal Q&A, and it can be related to this topic or any topic. If I can address or answer, I absolutely will. That said, though, as I like to always say, I am a registered dietitian, not your registered dietitian. So keep in mind, this is not medical advice. We are really just sharing with you education, information, so that you can feel empowered in some of the choices that you make, or just have some education under your belt whenever you happen to meet with your doctors or you're trying to figure out what works best for you. And also on that line, if there are things that you're planning on changing up or stopping or starting, please make sure that you check with your doctor first and get clearance to make sure that you're not accidentally, stopping some sort of medication regimen that you're on or eating something that might do more damage than good, because sometimes that's the case in certain clinical conditions. Lastly, when you register for this, I do collect your email addresses. It is part of my newsletter distribution system. So not only at the end of this, well, I always say not exactly immediately at the end of this, especially today, there's a lot going on, but within the next couple of days, this recording will be packaged up. A little thank you email will go out to all registrants. So sometimes people show up in person and sometimes they just cannot, which is fine because we record this. The link goes out to everyone after the fact. And like I said, in this case, you'll also get a handout that corresponds to what we're talking about today. And then in a couple of months' time, I upload these webinars to my YouTube channel for public viewing and public accessibility because I like to share my knowledge and make sure it is available to anyone who might need it. In addition to just receiving the thank you note and the recording of this event, you'll probably be on my newsletter list. So, if you get a little bit overwhelmed, I only send them out once a month. That's usually a little recap of things that are going on. Especially, I share like a monthly theme of what is usually related to these webinars and links that you can read some existing materials and resources. And then you can always register for that month's webinar in that newsletter. And with that said, I try not to overwhelm anybody when I'm sending out those newsletters, but if you ever want to opt out, you totally can. We usually have a disclaimer that says by registering for this event, you're going to be added to the newsletter distribution list. But like I said, you can always opt out. I'm not going to go too into detail into who I am. A lot of you do know me from doing these things. I am a registered dietitian, also known as a nutritionist or dietitian nutritionist. And you can see on screen here a bunch of the things that I do. And the reason why I'm not going to focus too much on just me is because, like I said, not only is it National Nutrition Month in March, but yesterday was National Registered Dietitian Nutritionist Day. So I'm going to ask you to humor me for a bit while I take you on a little tour of what even is a registered dietitian. I really enjoy sharing this information because it helps validate and solidify the value of who we are and what we do. I have now worked as a dietitian for about 9 years. It is a second career for me. So when I came into this new profession, I didn't really know what to expect. And now I can say I've worked with probably thousands of patients at this point from all different walks of life, from all different types of age ranges, and all different kinds of life cycle related things, and all different kinds of chronic conditions. And some things that come up and that are said to me are I didn't know what a registered dietitian was. I have never been referred to a registered dietitian. Or I worked with somebody who talked to me about my nutrition, but they gave me kind of like a very generic guide to follow. And in that case, it probably was not a registered dietitian. So you can see here on screen, we are part of what we call your interdisciplinary team members. If you're working with a primary care physician and you're dealing with a condition like diabetes, you might also have an endocrinologist, but you would also hopefully have a registered dietitian in your team as a support mechanism and also to be able to see into whatever more detailed modifications might need to be made for your diet. We call ourselves the nutrition experts because you'll see in a sec why. We go through a lot of schooling and continuing education as well. And we really try to focus on what's called patient-centered care. So what that means is like this, right? I'm equal to you. You know about your life, and I'm just there to kind of give you guidance and figure out how to make things work. I'm not telling you what to do or forcing you to do anything. It's not about me and what I think you should be doing. It's about you and how you can implement some of these changes to better support your overall health. This is what's required of us. So back in 2024, there was a mandate. We used to have just a bachelor's degree, and now we have to have a master's degree. We have to go into a year-long unpaid, we actually pay for it, dietetic internship where we are exposed to a variety of different experiences like a clinical setting, a community setting, food service, public schools. We also have to sit and take a national registered exam. That's about 2.5 hours long, about 140 questions or so. And then once we get officially credentialed, we do have to maintain continuing education units or knowledge to stay current and stay legitimate. We're also licensed not just as a credential across the country, but each state has its own specific regulations. So right now, because I do most of what I'm doing in the telehealth world, I can work across state lines, about 10 different states I'm allowed to see. But if I physically wanted to be located here in New York or New Jersey, and I wanted to see people in Michigan in person, I would also have to get licensed in Michigan, as an example. And we also maintain ethical billing practices. We work with a lot of insurance companies. We have to bill and code specifically to document what we're doing with you. I say this all because the word nutritionist gets tossed around a lot, and technically it's not really what's called a protected title, meaning a lot of people can call themselves nutritionists, but not everybody has the qualifications or the credentials to do what we do as dietitians. So if you are working with somebody who is a health coach or a nutritionist, just make sure, right? We talked a little bit about this in the end of December's webinar with complementary medicine approaches. Just ask about people's qualifications. Make sure they really are knowing what they're doing and that they can ask you the questions that are very important so that you're not being put in harm's way, so that you're not doing something that interacts with something else that you're trying to manage and then make your condition worse or potentially create some disordered eating patterns or fear around food, which is never what we want. Next up, where are we located? I just said everywhere. So I'm sharing this on screen because this is kind of the visual image of where there are tighter legislation laws around what is a registered dietitian and who can speak about food. So I just mentioned something like a health coach or a nutritionist. This could be somebody who just walks around in your supermarket and is like, hey, can I help you read labels and put things together? Or somebody who actually says, sign up for my $300 program. We're going to get you fit in the 30 days. And they provide you with a meal plan. Depending on the state legislature, in the green, yellow, and gray states, they are a little bit more lax with that. In all of the red states that you can see there, they have much stricter laws. So people can actually get in trouble. An example I like to give sometimes is a personal trainer at a gym can teach you about working out, cardio, weight training, any body movement, because that is what they are trained to do, but they're not allowed to talk to you about food. They have to refer you to a dietitian, even if it's just to create a very basic meal plan, like, eat fruits and vegetables and that sort of thing and protein, etc. But in those red states, they have to be very specific. Otherwise, they can get in trouble and they can get fined or their business can, be penalized in that sense. The role of what we do here too is a variety of different things. Like I said, there could be specialties. So my dad used to joke when I went back to school, you're paying all this money and going back to school just to what? To help people make salads? And I was like, how dare you, sir? How dare you? We help people manage their chronic conditions. We help reduce the risk of something happening or prevent something, hopefully, from getting worse. We work with people with food allergies, eating disorders, weight management issues, gastrointestinal issues. I mean, anything you can think of in the body that has a system, we are there to also assist. And you can also see there too, life cycle, pregnancy, anything pre or post conception, and athletic performance too. I'm not necessarily very savvy or credentialed in a subspecialty of sports nutrition, but we have sports nutritionists as well that work with coaches and teams if people are looking for, competitive edges and that sort of thing, how to manage their food. Here are just a smattering of our practice areas. So you might see us in hospital settings. You might also see us on the news programs being a spokesperson about whatever the new fad diet is or whatever new food information comes out to kind of explain and clarify some of that. We also, as I said before, I work in more of a telehealth setting, but we could be in person. We could be mobile. We could travel to a correctional facility. We can travel to a nursing home. We can travel to a person's office and help with either presenting nutrition information on an individual basis or plug in and do things like health fairs or wellness events, wellness persons, etc. And then next up here, what I always like to share too is listen, in the world of dietitians, about 86% of us are white women. So it's always nice to see that there is some representation, not just culturally speaking, but also people who really go above and beyond in some of the more unique issues that some populations might experience on a clinical matter or on a life cycle matter. So this is Jessie Wong, who is based out of California. She focuses a lot on the gut health, specifically irritable bowel syndrome. She has a whole program. She does a ton of stuff. I think she does private practice as well. You can find and follow her on Instagram. This is Kim Rose, who focuses solely on diabetes, nutrition education, pre-diabetes prevention, etc. She's got a great following as well. She has really quick little YouTube snippets that she puts up there. And she's got such a wide, again, she focuses specifically on a condition. I don't do that. I see a little bit of everybody all the time. And Kim focuses specifically on the type 2 or diabetes community. Now here's Katie. Katie focuses on geriatric or the senior population, and they have a lot of more unique needs depending on how many medicines they're on, depending on what gut complications they have going on. If they are in nursing homes, if they are independent, she really focuses specifically on that patient population. I think you've seen Zoe before. Zoe is a former intern of mine, and she focuses on traditional Chinese medicine. She was born and raised, I believe, out of Shanghai, and she travels across the world. So she's always bringing unique information and methods to whoever she meets. She holds events and she puts on these really beautiful, elaborate dinners and feeds people. And she just tries to educate people on the healing properties of food. And then last but not least, we have Kimmy Singh, who represents people in larger bodies. She's a big advocate for this as well. She's got some, I forget how long ago it was, a couple of years ago, with like disability and fat bias, where she had some legislation passed, like she was able to get whatever she needed past whatever the language is around the politics around this. And that was really a big coup because she was also an intern well after I became a dietitian, and now she's really making a way for herself and being able to represent people who are sometimes not represented or biased and discriminated against. So bringing us into this language around the power of nutrition, I thought to myself, I always think of like performance as just sports stuff, but everything we do is required to perform. So I thought I'd break this down into a few different categories, or sometimes I like to call them pillars, because When you focus on one, maybe all of them tend to strengthen up. And if you let something go, a lot of them tend to fall down. So to have this nice basis or foundation, I think is a good place to start. So starting off with fueling for steady energy. When we use the language energy, if you remember from last year, we had a macro and micronutrient conversation. So macronutrients are your carbs and your fats and your proteins. Macro meaning large sized molecules. When they break down in our body, they help us with processing whatever we need to do, different functions, breathing, me moving my hands around, pushing a stroller, lifting heavy things, having my heart move, muscle energy, etc., and brain power as well. So a lot of times when I hear people say something like, "Oh, I got so tired midday, so I grabbed a coffee or an energy drink," I often think, "Well, did you eat enough?" Because that should be the gas in your proverbial car that is your body. Fuel it with food. And if you remember from some of our past webinars, we talked about the balance of things as well, right? You're timing things and you're balancing things to make sure you have steady energy through the day. Better focus, less with feeling a little bit and also, right, enhancing your mood as well, like being able to kind of keep up and keep pepped up through the day. So here we talk about the balancing of meals, the carbs, the fats, and the protein. I totally understand that some people might reduce or restrict certain food groups or certain properties from their meals, but everything plays a role for what we do, whether it's breathing, brain health, heart health, blood circulation. So I really try to make sure that even if you have some sort of scaled down version of carbohydrates, whether you're working specifically towards a low carb diet or you maybe have recently gotten gallbladder removal and you can't process fats as well, there's still a way for you to be able to create a balanced meal. So you can always go back and look at some of the past webinars that I have shared with you. But this is a good example here. You have some maybe meat products or bean products. You have some fibrous foods like that, I believe sweet potato or carrot. Corn is technically a whole grain, so that also brings some good variety of carbs and fiber as well. Your avocado is a healthy fat. And so again, kind of having that balance. So even if you're just grabbing an apple, grab an apple plus something, an apple plus some nuts or some peanut butter, or an apple plus some cheese or some yogurt. That creates a balance. And in doing so, that allows us to have a little bit more of a fullness factor longer. And it also helps with slowing the digestion and stabilizing that blood sugar. So here's an example of how you can kind of like quote unquote upgrade your diet to make it more balanced. You might not be a breakfast person, that's totally okay, but maybe when you sit down, you have a hard-boiled egg, or you add some yogurt to something that you're already eating, or on the side of, you can add some vegetables or these fibrous sources like beans and lentils. And hydration plays a role here too. No calories in plain water. But keeping ourselves hydrated also help with our body functioning and can also help keep us the digestion going as well. You don't have to do this if you want to. You can just self-reflect right now because I know, as I said earlier, a lot of people tend to register for this, but sometimes only just a few people show up in person. So you might feel awkward answering things in the chat, but you can if you want to, or just reflect. When you look at the whole day at a glance, when you wake up to when you go to sleep, are there parts of your moments in time that you're going 4 to 5 hours without eating anything? Like you're in the zone, you're running from place to place, you forgot to bring something with you. So think about those long stretches of time where you're just like, nope, Far says yes, unfortunately, yes, Millie says. So the kind of like the rule that I tend to tell people is about 100 calories equals about an hour's worth of energy. So if you physically can see on your calendar where there's going to be large areas of time between one task and the other, or one meal and the other, maybe have some food in your arsenal. Remember, try to make it a little bit more well-rounded. Like a handful of nuts would be totally fine, but so could an apple and a piece of cheese, or crackers and some peanut butter. When you fuel yourself in that way, right? So if you've gone and eaten kind of a hearty meal in the beginning of the day, and then the next thing you know, it's 8 o'clock at night and you're sitting down for dinner, you're going to find yourself very, very hungry, and your blood sugar is going to go up and down. So check in with yourself. Even something as simple as just setting a timer or a reminder, like, hey, how am I doing? I'm hungry, I'm full. Let's see what's going on here. Next up, we have building and preserving muscle. So as we age, right? I've said this before in the longevity conversations and some of the other webinars we've had. Our body tends to deteriorate by nature. It's wears and tears. Even if you're working out, there's muscle tears that you need to replenish with food. So when you're talking about building and preserving muscle, one of the things that we focus on is protein sources. And protein can come from animals or plants, depending on your preferences, what you enjoy to eat, and how much you should get throughout the day. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the coming slides. This also helps with what's called metabolic health. Metabolism just means the way that our body can process things, process food, process our energy, process cellular functions, keeping us on that stability level. Blood sugar regulation too. So, we've had diabetes discussions in the past. I think every November I do a diabetes webinar. Even if you don't have diabetes, it helps to regulate and stabilize your blood sugar so that you're not having these spikes and drops throughout the day. And that can also affect your hormones in general, whether it's reproductive health or thyroid issues. So maintaining a nice, even, nice, stable blood sugar across the day is very important. And then just in the true sense of building and preserving muscles, uh, side note, okay, make sure you get medical clearance before you start doing anything because I'm not a personal trainer and I don't know what your regimen is like, but incorporating some form of resistance to your overall routine. I'm from New York City. Everybody walks, but how many people are actually lifting things over their head or moving in a way that resists? Whether you're doing wall push-ups or plank exercises, or you're physically lifting dumbbells like this person on the screen is doing, or you're working with resistance bands, that really helps with strengthening and maintaining, preserving our muscle because those are what are known as your building blocks for a lot of the things that our body does. And it also can help with healthy aging because, again, as we age, we deteriorate. And you might see somebody kind of like, old and frail with kind of like skinny little arms and their muscles are wasting away. It's important that we maintain that for body integrity and overall just health as far as that's concerned. So distributing your protein over the course of the day, having that balance idea in mind, right? Like if I'm having oatmeal plus something, maybe nut butter, maybe a half a hard-boiled egg, maybe a scoop of cottage cheese, yogurt, etc., something that's going to bring a protein source to here. You could also do protein powder if you want to, if you feel like you're not really hitting this, but try to see if you can implement different sources of protein. So like you can see on screen, one of the things I always like to share is I think a cup of broccoli has about the same amount of grams of protein as a chicken breast. But not all foods are created equally. Animal products have what's called a complete source of amino acids. It's a complete protein where your plant sources kind of have to be combined. So like beans and rice complement each other. That's a great source of a plant-based protein. So, right, if you're doing beans and rice, keep up the good work, friends, and try to aim for about 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. If you need a little bit more because you're working out, etc., you can always do maybe like a post-workout shake or something like that just to add a little bit more protein to your diet. Here you can see on screen some of the suggestions about protein boosts, and it doesn't have to be a ton, right? A serving size, I say, is just kind of like the palm of your hand or like a closed fist sort of size. This could be a hamburger, a piece of fish, a handful of beans, a piece of tofu. So anything that's kind of like in the palm size range is about 4 ounces or so. And depending on the amount of grams of protein in that item. So like I said, a chicken breast could be like 24 grams of protein. You kind of covered it there. But a whole egg is only about 6 grams of protein. Now, you don't necessarily want to eat a dozen eggs in one sitting, but you can go and buy a little carton of egg whites. And when you're making your scramble, so you're not utilizing the yolk is mostly cholesterol. And of course, it's very tasty, but you want to add some extra protein in it. Drizzle in some extra serving or two of protein, and now you've gotten that from 6 grams to maybe like 18 grams of protein in one sitting. Okay, another check-in. If you feel like sharing this with me, listen, I do this every time. Can you see behind me? There is a yoga mat and 2 dumbbells that have been sitting there collecting dust. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm a human and a lot of stuff is going on in my life right now that I am foregoing some physical activity. But what about you? Do you try to include some form of resistance training in what I hope is your daily workout routines, but more so your weekly workout routines? Ideally, about 2 to 3 times a week, you should be working some form of resistance or weight bearing exercise, and it could be different parts of your body. So again, if you want to confess or admit yes or no in the chat, and we can hold you accountable if that's something that you want to, include going forward. Again, as far as aging is concerned, that also helps with stabilizing our core. When we get older, we're more prone to falls and fractures. So allowing us to build that resistance and to build that stability is also very important. Not just pumping iron to get like big, this could just be anything that you're doing, dumbbells, resistance bands, etc. Oh, perfect. Wonderful, wonderful. I can see in the chat here trying for 3. Taste of tofu for, usually tofu is kind of like non-tasting. It absorbs other things around it. So it just feels, I don't know, kind of like a spongy texture. But when you sear it, when you toast it, when you drizzle it in different kinds of sauces, it takes on the taste of those things. Thank you for asking that question as well. Let's check in the chat here too. Nice, Millie. Some resistance bands, lightweight. It looks like cheese, exactly. Yeah, looks like cheese. Doesn't taste like cheese. Doesn't taste like cheese. And there's different taste and textures to it. There's firmnesses to it as well. So you can have like a silken tofu, which you can utilize in a shake or a smoothie. You can do a hard, firm tofu, which you can actually cut like in slices and grill it. Very, very, I think, quite versatile plant-based protein if you enjoy those types of items. All right, next up, we're going to talk about the brain. We had a whole webinar on brain stuff, so I'll leave you to go find that at some point if you want to learn more about this. But another thing about the power of nutrition is it really helps with tying in all of that mental and physical energy, focus, memory. Also emotional, right? Hangry. I'm getting hangry. If I haven't eaten, right? Nobody wants to talk to me and deal with me. And it can also help us be able to be productive. I know a lot of people that watch these webinars and sign up for these webinars are my students. But listen, no matter where you are in life, you're probably juggling a lot of things. So once again, I keep asking, when's the last time you ate? How much did you eat enough? Is that okay? What's going on there? It helps with those sources too. One of the things we tend to focus on more with specifically reducing the risk of neurodegenerative disorders is more healthy fats like salmon and walnuts and seeds and olive oils. That really has been shown to help support brain function. There's actually an intervention, a medical intervention for children with epileptic seizures because, right, the brain is kind of short circuiting, but they go on a very, very short term regimented diet. Believe it or not, it is called the keto diet. It is the foundation of the keto diet, not the keto diet that most people have taken on for, weight management diet approaches. But they kind of pump the kid full of very high fat foods to help with stabilizing the brain, reducing the severity and the frequency of epileptic seizures. So that's something that a doctor and a dietitian will integrate short term, and then the child, kind of like passes that trial period and can get back to their normal food habits. But that just goes to show you the power of food and the power of nutrition. So here, carbohydrates, protein sources, healthy fats. I like showing on screen when people think of carbs, they often think of just like rice and pasta and bread. Friends, every plant you could possibly think of has a carb in it. And the only animal source that has a carb is milk. Milk has a naturally occurring milk sugar known as lactose, right? You might know somebody or might be yourself lactose intolerant. So you are allergic to, or I should say, you have a sensitivity to the naturally occurring milk sugar that's in milk. But quite literally, everything has carbs. And I never want people to deny themselves fully of carbs. I think they play a great role in our recommendations. About half of the food that you eat all day should have carbs in it because they're an immediate source of energy. They allow us to move, breathe, heart regulation, blood circulation, all the things, all the cellular functions rely on that too. So another thing I ask too when people are getting a bit sluggish is, did you forget to include some carbs? Because protein and fat slows the digestion. It might keep you fuller longer and might make you feel a bit more sluggish, but you pop in a couple of carbs there, boop, immediate source of energy. I got myself jazzed up and ready to go. Let's take a look in. Yeah, thanks, Millie. Tofu is a great substitute for meat in a lot of dishes too. I also like alternate versions of that too, like tempeh and fermented soy, just to kind of, again, just to add a little bit more to my repertoire of food if I get a little tired of what I'm eating and just, just experiment with stuff. So again, here's some practical strategies. I don't know how practical every one of these are. If you are a busy person on the go all the time and you keep skipping meals, you're doing a disservice to your body. Your body's like knocking on you going, could please feed me? I'm so hungry. So try to not do that. If you're not a person that starts off with a big breakfast, that's okay. But try to, in the first few hours of your waking up, welcome to the world, feed yourself. And then, like I said before, maybe set some timers every few hours, check in with yourself, see how it's going. Am I hungry? Am I full? When's the next time I'm going to eat? Try not to skip throughout the day. Have some snacks on hand. If you work in an office or in a place where you can store things, like a little pantry, snacks, refrigerated foods, yesterday's leftover lunch, you can have, whatever's left over from there, you can grab a quick bite out of that too. Try to fuel yourself as you're going. Always try to include some sort of healthy fat. We talked about that earlier. Avocados, walnuts, nuts, and seeds in general. Salmon is a great fatty food, so is tuna, and things like olive oil as well. Hydrate early and often. I know there used to be a saying that thirst and hunger kind of like get confused, but that's not entirely true. But I will say what happens is if people have massive headaches, it's probably that they haven't eaten or they haven't stayed hydrated enough. If people are having issues managing or controlling their blood sugar, it could not be related to food at all. It could be related to hydration. Are you dehydrated? Is something going on in your body? So do try to. So this is right. I have kind of like one of these just standard large size. I go through maybe three of those. Or if you have one of those like 16-ounce bottles, single serve things. Again, I forget what my next question is. This is the question for my check-in for this section, but throw in the chat too. How much water are you drinking on a daily basis? You don't have to like drown yourself in water. In fact, I would encourage you not to. Sometimes you overhydrate. But like if you're sweating, moving around a lot, being really physically active, if you had kind of a high sodium meal a couple of nights ago, pizza or takeout, make sure you're really giving your body some of that hydration and let things flush out, let that cellular function happen in there too. So this next question comes related to the whole brain discussion. And again, you can answer yes, no in the chat if you want to. Do you suffer from brain fog or fatigue at certain points of the day? Right? I always half joke. This isn't a very good joke, but it's like, is it menopause or is it early onset dementia? I can't be sure sometimes because I'm like, what was I doing? What was I supposed to say? I can't concentrate. But sometimes it's because I didn't eat enough or I didn't have a good balance of food or, I mean, there's obviously other reasons why people can kind of get a little fuzzy, but that's a good point to start. Like the easiest way is to feed yourself and fuel yourself and be somewhat consistent with how you're doing that. Integrating those balanced meals, getting some really vibrantly colored foods, throwing in a healthy fat, like a little slice of avocado in here and there, or a handful of nuts on something, and see if that changes up. We don't want you to burn out. So, check in with yourself in other ways too. Is this workload too much? Are people asking too much of me? I'm feeling very unfocused right now. I feel very discombobulated. That could be a good indicator too that you might need to reset a little bit in there too. Okay, let's take a look. Thanks, Millie. I will try. Let's take a look here. Millie says great. Okay, I did the tofu one or at least one bottle, carrying with yourself. I mean, those of you who are on campus with me, I see people walking around with those gallons that look like little mini water cooler things. I'm like, what? But their point is it gets lighter as the day progresses, right? Like this is very heavy for me to carry and it reminds me I have to drink. I don't necessarily drink an entire gallon. I don't know if I can get that much, but maybe I do once all the stuff is put together. And if I added it up, maybe it is around a gallon or so. Okay, next up, long-term vitality. We had a lot of conversations maybe a couple years ago. We talked about healthy aging, the blue zones across the world of what do the people do that have the least amount of disease and the longest life expectancy? Like, what is their secret? It's not always a secret. This is again just a reiteration, reconfirmation, recommitment to some of those things that you used to do back in the day, you kind of forgot to do now. It doesn't necessarily guarantee long life, but it can help with reducing that risk of chronic diseases, which can then shorten your life expectancy. Again, back in the day, millions and millions of years ago, or hundreds of decades ago, whatever, life expectancy was what, 36, 40 if you were lucky? Then, right, we discovered sanitation and vaccines and water cleaning services, and all of those things are like, oh, I can stay alive and I don't have like early deaths happening. And now life expectancy is in almost the 80 range or so, not just in this country, but pretty much worldwide. People are living well into their hundreds. I mean, listen, I'm 57. I'm already tired. I don't know if I can make it that far, but we'll see. We'll see what I can do to get there. So think about how you see the future you. Whether you are currently in your 50s, currently in your 20s, wherever you are, think in the future. Who's that person going to be? And what can I do right now to make sure that they're going to be okay with it and not mad at me after all this? So obviously what you see on screen here, not just cardiovascular, decreased cardiovascular risk factors, anything that could be running in your family, you can play a role with how you are living your future years out, reducing that risk of disease, and also focusing on, again, those dietary patterns, your metabolic health, how things are working inside. So if there's minor tweaks you need to make, sometimes, as I was saying before, as we age, our appetite tends to decrease. We might be diagnosed with a few things. Our gut health starts getting a little bit and we might start shifting things. I often use my mom as an example in a lot of these conversations, who I think at this point, she's not going to get mad at me if I share her age. She should be quite proud of it. She's going to turn 90 in 2 months. So she's currently 89 and whatever, 10 months old. And she knows she has no appetite, right? She doesn't know when she's hungry, but when she sits down, she can eat an entire meal. And I'm very, very proud of her. And even lately, so I've mentioned before, I visit her. You'll see the bed in the background when I'm hanging out with her at her house. Sometimes quite late at night, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, I'm still milling about. She's still watching late night shows or whatever. And I'll walk over to her with a little bowl of one of my favorite snacks, grapes, and cut up hard cheese like an Asiago, like that nice kind of pungent, salty, and then some crackers, like a wheat thin cracker or some crackers that we can have there. So there's a little sweet and saltiness going on, or like apples or pears and cheese is another one that we like to. And I'll bring it over to her. I'm like, you want a snack? And she'll have a snack. So again, it's not like I put an end time, like 7 o'clock, I can't eat anymore, but I regulate my patterns throughout the day. So I include vibrant colors, colored food. I include balance through stuff. And then depending on if I feel a little snacky at the end of the night, I have a little handful of something. And I very much appreciate when my mom joins me with that as well. So here, just again, to kind of focus on another kind of nutrient. When we talk about fiber, fiber technically is part of the carbohydrate family, but it doesn't digest like regular food does because it breaks it down in our stomach and our body can't really process this and doesn't know what to do with it. So in one end and out the other it goes, but you still need to make sure you're including fibrous foods in your diet for what you see on here too. Helps with keeping us regular, helps cholesterol is a big one too, right? The first thing we usually recommend. And cholesterol is a tricky one to manage because our liver does a job and works overtime, and no matter what we do, we can't fix it. But we usually try to encourage increasing our fiber intake, and fiber is definitely one of those things that Americans do not get enough of. They get plenty of protein. Don't worry about your protein, but what you doing about fiber? I always tend to recommend to make sure that you're eating fiber from fibrous foods. Try not to just be popping tons of gummies or fiber pills or using the kind of stuff that you can stir into your water. It does play a role, but it's a supplement. We want to make sure, are you fulfilling your needs of what you're trying to get here? So the hierarchy, right? The things that contain the most amount of food, of fiber in the food gram per gram are actually beans, legumes, lentils, that kind of family of what they call pulses, that family. And then you have like your leafy greens and anything with a skin that you can eat, like a potato, an apple, anything with a skin that you can eat. Other whole grain sources like brown rice, corn, these are all fibrous foods. So you can quite literally see here. This is also why when we talk about like fruit consumption, we would rather you eat the whole fruit. We would rather you have a smoothie versus having a fruit juice or a juiced version of your fruits and vegetables, because the fiber goes away when you pulverize and process that stuff. You remove the fiber, and we really want to keep it in there. One of the very, very big rules, though, because I get a lot of this sometimes too, where I either forget to tell people or they forget to do it. When you increase fiber, you increase fluid. Otherwise, it will work against you and you will not feel comfortable and you're going to end up constipated. So make sure you're always staying well hydrated, what we just said before. Increase fiber, increase fluid. Let's take a look. I know, I know, Far, that couple was looking a little saucy, right? Okay, next up here, patterns, not perfection. We always try to say, focus on the big version, not like I'm on a diet and I'm going to do all this stuff and I'm going to clean out everything and stop eating whatever and start eating whatever for the next 30 days. It's about the progress you're making over time. It's about the future you, what that entails. Things that are not sustainable are not going to be helpful for you. If you can't manage something long term, it's not going to be realistic. It's okay to kind of like kickstart yourself into something if you feel like you want to just challenge or implement new strategies. That might be something that could be like for the next 3 weeks, I want to do XYZ, but really try to think of the long-term approach and the long-term effects of all this. Quality and quantity, macros, right? That balance of carbs, fats, and protein, and micros, your vitamins and minerals, all the different colors that you have in your food are going to play a role. Think about too things like inflammation. Inflammation, we had a whole webinar, oh gosh, a year and a half ago, I think, about that. Inflammation is in a lot of us. Inflammation could be, you're smoking, you stand outside and you live next to kind of like a highly polluted area, or you could be dealing with some sort of infection, or you could actively be managing a very serious chronic condition like HIV, cancer, etc. That can automatically cause inflammation in your body. You could also be eating a very high intake of heavily processed foods, fried foods, snack treats, etc., with all that extra added sugar, salt, and fat. That can also create inflammation. So remember, think about what's missing from your diet, from your world, from your activities, and try to incorporate little things like this in patterns. But because what's the point in life if you can't have a little fun? Make sure there's some flexibility there too. Make sure that you allow yourself to have some fun. I like to always talk about like an 80-20 approach to things. 80% of my meals, of my days, of my weeks, of my habits are pretty much spot on. Like I can say to myself, I did a good job taking care of myself. I think I did I made the right choices. And 20%, go nuts, right? Have fun at those parties, enjoy a little margarita or some pizza or whatever, but try to look at that pattern. If I'm doing is alcohol and salty foods every day, that's going to increase inflammation. That's going to put me more at risk for chronic conditions down the line. So try to implement that progress, not perfection, or patterns, not perfection. So here's another check-in. People go crazy when I talk about servings of fruits and vegetables. It's supposed to be five a day. That's all you need. Three and two, three vegetables, two fruits. That's it. You're done. You make a smoothie, you're done. Like you already did it. You make a salad, you did it. Those are the five things. So think about over the course of every day, right? Like every day. We're talking Sunday through Saturday, 7 days a week. Are you at least getting a certain amount of servings of fruits and vegetables? Is it offset? Are you more of a fruit person and you totally forget about veggies? Like me, I forget about fruit a lot. Or are you more of a vegetable person, not so much fruit? Are you like, I haven't looked at a vegetable at all? And vegetable, I'm not just talking about all plants like grain-based foods, etc. Potatoes, yes, technically a vegetable. But I'm talking like leafy greens, colorful types of fruits and vegetables, blueberries, those antioxidant rich things that we can add in to our diet. So let's take a look in the chat here too. How every day. Okay, good, good, good. Mostly plant-based. Okay, Millie, that's good. And I'm sure if you don't mind me asking, like, can you compare who you are now to who you were back in the day? Like, do you see significant changes in your diet, or have you always been like a very plant-based person where you're like, this is just what I've always done? Thanks, Johanna, with a thumbs up in there. That's great. I definitely, I mean, back in the day, I didn't do a lot of good things. And then I suffered the gut consequences in my diet. And I probably went to the opposite extreme where I restricted a ton of stuff and only focused on more like vegan eating. And that really didn't work for me. So now I kind of have more of a flexible approach, more pescatarian. I don't love meat and chicken. So again, I'm not going to like deny myself of things. Whether it's morality based for animal humanity, etc., or humane animal processes, yes, that. But also, if I feel like I'm craving something, I try to check in with myself, like maybe I'm deficient in something, maybe I need to eat something that has that quality, and it might be a little harder for me to do with just a plant. But I do have like mostly plants. No changes in the last 2 years. Okay, good or bad. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing, but like as in you've been pretty consistent. So now we can kind of wrap it all up and put it together. I'm just checking my time here. Where, do like a little audit. I know a lot of you who are on here are pretty spot on, but there's always room for improvement if you feel like you've fallen off track in anything. Have you been having steady energy? Are you feeling the consequences of fatigue? Are you like, oh, I totally forgot to have some fiber? Is there some variety? Or like me, do you need to get back to strength training soon? Yes, I do. So up next here is just kind of an example, right? If you really wanted to try to implement something immediately, maybe just give yourself 7 days in a row, or you could even pick and choose one day a month or one day a week or something like that. again, what's missing, right? Add something, include something, drink the water, eat a balanced snack, include movement, add one more vegetable. And then as the week progresses, look ahead. What do I need to do? Am I going out this day? Do I have a happy hour planned? Is it an event going on? And then what's my work schedule look? What's my personal schedule look like? How can I create meals for the week? When I plan, we have webinars on tons of meal planning and prepping. But when I plan my schedule, I don't, so I plan, right? I plan meaning I look at my schedule and I go, this is what I would like to eat on all of these days. But when I prep my meals, I'm not prepping for 7 days in a row. I prep maybe like 3 days at a time. And then I use leftovers, or then I allow for some flexibility at the end of the week, and then I kind of start over again. So I'm not going and making giant vats of things that are going to stay in the fridge. If I do bulk cooking, I'll usually store it in the freezer for later, but I'll give myself like one little option of everything for about four days or so. And then I just eat the leftovers of that, or I add in some other stuff that I'm like, it's been a while since I had something from the outside world. Let's take a look. Oh, good. Inflammation is way down. Autoimmune. Yeah, so that's quite challenging, Millie. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. At the end of every webinar, I always like to stop and kind of ask you to do some reflection on what we learned, or again, maybe you just recommit to some of the things that you're already doing. What is something you want to start doing if you've not been doing that consistently or regularly? What's something that you're like, I'm good, and just keep on doing that stuff and make sure you, again, recommit to that, the things that work for you, the things that are of service to you. And then what's something that is no longer serving you that like, I think it's time to stop doing whatever, whether that is food, whether that is toxic people in your life, whether that is an unrealistic workload of things like I need some help, help me, or it's going to take me a little extra time to get to that because I got too many things going on this week. So you'll have to wait until next week for me to do that. Stop saying yes to things is just as important as stopping smoking sometimes when it comes to like stress and healthy habits. All right, next up, some self promotion here because you might come and see me every month. We have all these topics. Like I said, they are recorded, they go out to everybody who's registered, but then I like to set them up and do like a legacy library on my YouTube channel. I'm currently really not engaging in any way, shape, or form anymore on social media, but I really try to make my YouTube channel the place to go. So check out the playlist. There's tons of stuff on there, very specific to either conditions or, like I said before, meal planning, or we did a New Year's reset. We do midpoint resets sometimes too, just kind of like, do little goals for yourself. Definitely feel free to share this with others and like and subscribe and all that jazz because it helps me grow my audience. It helps me be able to get my information out there. And it helps me feel validated because I know this stuff, but it does take me about 6 to 10 hours to put together these webinars. So I don't want them just to live in one place. I want to be like, off you go into the world. And as I'm sure all of you know, especially on YouTube, holy cow, it is saturated full of people talking about everything, but definitely people who talk about food and nutrition. Sometimes they don't do the right things out there. And I really feel like I'm a good resource for that. So please feel free to join me on YouTube, check it out, and share. If you are interested in dietetic services, so if you want to work with me or know somebody who wants to work with me or are just curious about what a dietitian does, you can go to my website. You can kind of check out like the services and I think I said the states and the insurances that I take. If we're not in network or if you're like, I'm not interested in working with Dina, I definitely encourage you to go talk to somebody who is a dietitian, whether you need a referral or not, whether it's just kind of like a real quick one-time check-in of like, am I on the right path here of what I'm doing? Or if you really are struggling with trying to manage your condition, because again, with all due respect to your doctors and your specialists and your subspecialists, they are not trained like we are. You saw how much I shared with you in the beginning of this webinar in food and nutrition, complications, ways to include that as a therapeutic approach and to avoid any potential complications that can happen, whether it comes from telling people to cut out rice, no more rice in your diet. And you're like, what are you? I can't do that. Or giving you wrong information about certain things where a dietitian could be like, that's not correct. Your doctor was wrong. We're allowed to say your doctor was wrong. And you need to speak to me because I'm the expert in the field. So I very much encourage you to, again, advocate for the value of what a dietitian is and does, and try to meet with one if you can. Oh boy, let me tell you something. I've been working on this next for years. I've been working on this one. So much stuff that comes up in food cravings, right? Why are we addicted to food? Is there such a thing as a food addiction? Um, why do I crave something salty or sweet? I'm doing quite the deep dive on this topic. So next month, I hope you can join me in the newsletter that goes out, but also in the thank you registration page with the recording of this webinar. You'll have a link to that one for next month. They're almost always on the second Thursday of every month. Usually 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. my time, Eastern time, because that's when I have the time to do it. But like I said, unlike I always see, right, everybody registers for it. Maybe some people come to it in real time, and then everyone else benefits because the recording goes out, and then even more people benefit from it because the recording gets posted to YouTube in a couple of months' time. Not just thank you for coming here and thanking me also for putting this together, but thank you to the resources, the references, the researchers, the scientists, the all the people across the land that put together so much information that allow me to create and provide to you what is known as evidence-based guidance, right? I don't take this lightly. I'm not just making up stuff and be like, you should eat more vegetables. There's a reason why you should eat more vegetables. There's a reason why we try to encourage what we're trying to share with you, to focus on, and to get you to just support your overall health and well-being. So on that note, my friends, I'm going to give you maybe 3 minutes or so just to open it up if anybody has questions, comments, or feedback, because I'm running a little bit tight on time right now, but I'm always happy to, let me take a look. So in the chat, Far, how should I eat a balanced snack? So Far, one of the things, like I said before, is even if you kind of just break down what the ingredients are, like, is this right, an apple? It is carbs and the skin is fiber, but there's no protein and there's no fat in there. So maybe just add some nuts to it or add a yogurt or something. If you have a banana, same thing, right? A banana, you're taking the peel off, so there's not really a lot of fiber in a banana either. So maybe have half a banana with some nuts or some yogurt or whatever. Guacamole and vegetables. Again, guacamole would be an avocado, healthy fat, some decent amount of fiber in there too, with vegetables that are fibrous and also have carbs and a little bit of protein, like broccoli. We were saying before, you could drag some broccoli through a dip or a sauce like that too. So that could be something very, very simple. Thank you, Millie. Great reminder on hydration. Yes, exactly. For my website, dishwithdina.com, to learn more about me. I think that's your question. But you could also look at the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They have a directory in there, sort of other dietitians. I think you might have been talking about that. Millie, thank you. I remember Marissa. I think about her often because she used to, well, I used to be on Instagram quite a lot, and she's on there often too with like a lot of the books that she reads and the events that she goes to. And I always think of myself, I wonder what happened to her. So please send her my regards as well. I really think about her, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm grateful too, everybody. Thank you so much. So if that's it, we'll wrap up. I look forward to seeing you hopefully next month.